Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Greybeards podcast. Uh, if you haven't seen us for a few days, we were hunkered down in the Greybeard headquarters, keeping an eye on the World Cup matches, and then the U.S. lost, so we're back at it now.
We're back.
We're all of our attention is focused on the other great competition. With me is Ken Campbell, um, renowned in military intelligence and naval special operations. And we have Bob Sands, also renowned investigative reporter and a man of many talents. So, hey, everybody. Well, we picked a hell of a day to start up again here.
Yeah.
Uh, this, when we last left you, we had a memorandum of understanding that was, broken about every day, but there were a couple of three missiles launched one direction, an attack on the ship, but it changed overnight. What happened, Bobby?
Well, right now we're bombing away Iran again. Um, it started when the Iranians hit three ships in the Strait. And that got everything started. We had this big exchange last night. 80 sites is what we hit. They fired their missiles and their drones at our bases in Kuwait and I guess Qatar or Bahrain. I'm sorry, Bahrain. Anyway, now, Trump said he thought everything was over. So much for the MOU. We're not on a ceasefire, and we're back attacking Iran again tonight, right now, as we speak.
So, Ken, what do you think? Is this just another round of tit for tat, or are we speeding back towards war in the Gulf, do you think? From your analysis, from the Beastworks analysis. And we'll get into that, by the way, later on, folks, where you can catch uh, Ken Campbell's analysis, the Beastworks analysis, and it's great stuff. So what do you think, Ken?
Yeah, so I think, as the negotiations have proceeded, there are probably some points that Iran is not willing to concede, the least of which is using the Strait of Hormuz as a cash cow with its partner in that venture with Oman. And I think, it's really interesting because whatever deterrence equation the U.S. thinks is in play um, doesn't seem to factor into this at this point. So I think the threat of being uh, hit with retaliatory strikes is not bothering Iran that much because among other things they've already shown that they don't have to defeat us militarily. And all they have to do is impose reoccurring costs and have us consume these expensive interceptors and maintain a risk premium on oil and disrupt maritime confidence and pressure the Gulf partners. And this has manifold effect, quite frankly, through the globe, the Middle East, Europe, and Indo-Pacific.
Well, I mean, they stood to gain hundreds of billions of dollars if they would have gone through with this, followed this agreement under the terms of the memorandum of understanding that both parties signed on to. But it looks to me that they don't see any downside, despite the fact that last night it was 80 plus missiles, cruise. I don't know what kind of missiles, or if drones were involved as well, but there were 80 strikes or 80 plus strikes on military targets. And for them, it's worth firing on ships on the Gulf that aren't going through their lanes that they set up closer through the Straits of Hormuz, rather than a lot of these ships taking the southern route near Oman. And it looks to me that they don't care about these 80 strikes, that kind of retaliation, because they don't believe that the U.S. is capable of stopping this and my view is they don't think the U.S. is going to attack their refining infrastructure because of what they could do to our allies in the Gulf and their refining infrastructure. So an escalation to them, as it stands right now, they could lose hundreds of millions that they could be gaining, but they don't care. The number one point is to keep the Straits of Hormuz.
So, Mike, if I might, a couple points on that. Number one, we've heard about, the sanctions being lifted,
Yes.
licenses being given for them to sell the oil, frozen assets to the tune of $70 billion being unfrozen, and then this $300 billion reconstruction package. All that is talk. We don't know exactly what has been discussed in the meetings. And it could be that there's among other things, a lack of confidence on the part of the Iranians that these things are actually going to come about. In addition, they know they can poke the bear and make the U.S. pay repeatedly for trying to maintain this international system that has been in place, with regard to stability in the Gulf and certainly the flow of oil and all the other things that come through the straits. And the only reason I see them for engaging in these attacks against the shipping is because they're not happy with whatever seems to be going on that is not visible to us at this point. That's what I think is going on. But the other point too is this, with regard to your comments about losing uh, the financial propositions, the money, the promised rebuilding, reconstruction funds. Um, we also don't have a good insight as to how Russia, China, and North Korea are continuing to support Iran, and they are. Meanwhile, all three of them benefit to some degree by, what's going on again now.
How?
And it's in the form of depletion of these very expensive weapons that we've talked about. Cruise missiles take quite a while. They're not something you just turn out overnight, right? And those are depleted, as are the very expensive Patriot missile interceptor systems. So, there's a lot of benefit to these other players that are playing in some way, shape, or form, no doubt. It could be that they're promising money, financial support and weaponry and this sort of thing. I know Russia cut an arms package back in 2025 that was pretty hefty, including jet trainers, Su-35s, all kinds of things. So, we don't know what's going on in that back end, other than we do know that there is some level of support continuing to get through, sent by all three of these countries to Iran.
It's amazing how intertwined everything is because Ukraine's getting hit hard by Russian ballistic missile strikes and drones, but they're basically out of interceptors um, yeah, to take down those ballistic missiles. The inventory is low because of what's going on there. And you have two similar things going on in both of those wars, with you had the NATO summit today and, all of the convergence of the Ukrainian war and the war in the Gulf was very clear today. Here is Ukraine, and by the way, the president said that he would prevail upon the builders of the Patriot missiles to give them a license to build them in Ukraine. But that's going to take a while to go through the pipeline. Right now, they're very exposed, even though most military experts in the world believe they are now, the tide has turned in that war, are winning it. But they are winning it against a superior force, a larger army, the Russian army. And that's the same thing that's going on in the Gulf. The Iranians are prevailing right now against a larger, better equipped, more sophisticated force. the United States. And so, in that way, besides being intertwined with, a scarcity of both defensive and offensive weapons that's starting to emerge, um, you know, you they're also intertwined in they're basically asymmetrical wars where the little guy is winning out.
Yeah, well, we may have the world's most sophisticated arsenal, but sophistication doesn't give you magazine depth. And I don't mean magazines you read, I mean magazines where you store weapons.
Well, Ken, I mean, you and I both worked extensively in war zones all around the world, and most recently it was Afghanistan. And you know, certainly General Petraeus got it that we were going. I think that we were going about uh, these various wars against lesser foes with that launched asymmetrical strikes using IEDs and hit and run tactics. But we don't. It seems like every conflict we get in, we have to start the learning curve all over again. Is my assessment wrong on that?
No, I don't think so. But I would want to take a harder look at, what has gone on. I think again, Mike, when this thing started, there was an expectation on the part of our National Command Authority, the President and the Secretary of Defense, and then the rest of the military leadership, that this was going to be a cakewalk. We're going to go in there and we're going to degrade or destroy Iranians' nuclear capabilities and whatnot. One of the things we found was that Iran's deep undergrounds, were deeper than the penetrators could reach. And so we had a result to apparently bombing the entrances to these undergrounds. And during the stop pause, the ceasefire, Iran has put a lot of time and energy into opening those undergrounds back up and regaining access to whatever war materials. This is more than just the nuclear production infrastructure and the enriched uranium. It certainly includes drone storage and ballistic missile storage and the like. So I think there was a great underestimation here, particularly with regard to how Iran has been able to reconstitute things along the way.
Do
Doesn't
you
that
think Russia, China, and North Korea are um, have a plan, or this is just happening with that they're planning with Iran, that there's coordination between all of those parties? Because, as you mentioned, Russia, China, and North Korea are benefiting by this, uh, and Iran. You can debate that, but do you think there's coordination, or this is more ad hoc?
I think they just all see the opportunity. And one of the things that we discussed this morning, over a black swan type event where Chinese launching a ballistic missile the other day, and our troops being pulled out of Europe, and what our plans are to sort of not completely withdraw from NATO, but certainly to pull resources out. That if they were all looking at this together and they all got together to connive. No, I think what's going on is that they see an opportunity, and they don't they're not going to squander it. And so Russia is probably talking with Iran, certainly about these things, and China, and then absolutely North Korea. But one of the other things, Mike, is that for the ballistic missiles in particular, and anything that is moved by a rocket motor, China provides the precursor chemicals and materials to produce the rocket motor propellant. Those precursors are not something that are done, produced indigenously and inside of Iran.
And China has kind of monopolized that. I mean, has the market on that.
Well, let's no, it's just that Iran doesn't have the capacity to produce the perchlorates that go into the
Oh,
rock
I'm
propellant
sorry. I
development.
think I misspoke. I meant China. China has those rare minerals, right?
Well,
Or the
they certainly. I mean, the basis for the rocket motors is not rare earth minerals,
yeah,
but but they control
but
rare earth minerals that we need for those threat weapons that we field,
yeah, no,
which is an
that's what I
interesting
meant.
twist, right? I think we're all reading some of the reporting that BeastWorks generated, and I have to tell you, I was a little surprised at what came up from the analysis this morning. That rare earth minerals that China has control over factor into the construction of some of these threat weapons, like cruise missiles and the like.
And that's what I was. Yeah,
Yeah,
I kind of conflated a couple of things there, but those rocket motors. Is that where those rare earth minerals are used in, or what other part
not
of
in the
the
no,
missile?
not in the motors, but
The fuel.
when you get into your guidance and control systems and your the control surfaces, the little winglets and whatnot, and the electronic packages and things that drive those things. That's where some of these rare earth minerals come into play.
What do you think, Bobby? You got it.
I take a slightly harder look at this. All you got to do is look at a map, and you can see the Caspian Sea, which is fully navigable. Uh, you know, borders right up against Russia and goes straight down to Iran. I mean, that's a pipeline, if nothing else, for all the kinds of materials that they might need to rebuild things. I mean, Ken, do you think they had all the makings to rebuild more missiles hidden underground? Or, I mean, they seem to have reconstituted their drone force, their missile capabilities. Um, that takes a lot of stuff, materials.
Yeah, well,
Where
there are these rat lines that continue to endure from Russia to Iran, China to Iran, North Korea to Iran. Um, with China and the precursor chemicals and whatnot, they're being shipped in cargo ships. And if those cargo ships are able to make it around the corner and get up to the straits, of course, the door is open, right?
Yeah, the Chinese ships have been getting through the strait. They're one of the few that's been getting through. And that's the solid rocket fuel we're talking about here, not
Right,
liquid.
right,
And that's very important because if you're running liquid fuel, you have to refuel these things. They're out in the open. They're fully exposed. You got
right.
solid rocket fuel, you just stick it in there and off you go.
Well, and they have a combination of solid fuel and liquid fuel propellants, for these things. But the bottom line is that they're continuing to get help, and these rat lines are not um, blocked. These rat lines are open for business.
What about, can we talk for a moment about their mining operation? I keep reading more and more that they're back mining again. Have you seen anything on this? Is there something else going on here that we're not hearing too much
Well,
about?
it makes perfect sense. We have not wiped out their go fast boats, some of which are specifically designed to carry one or two mines. Um, and the mini subs that they field, which are I can't remember what the numbers are, but they were fairly significant. Those haven't all been accounted for, and each of those is capable of firing torpedoes or launching bottom mines, including those bottom mines that are basically uh, a torpedo in a capsule. And these are Chinese designs, Chinese variants. Um, Carrier killers, if you will, because once those things launch and they lock in on the target, they're moving about 200 kilometers an hour with a rocket motor.
And
Ooh,
all of this, we need to look at the fact that all of this is happening with the backdrop of this days long funeral ceremony for the Ayatollah Khomeini. That if you've seen any of the video coming out of Iran, there are black revenge flags being flown. It looks like a country that at the beginning of the year was teetering, that the the IRGC and the Islamic leadership in Iran was teetering and perhaps on the verge of collapse, and the Trump administration was counting on that, and that didn't happen. It sure didn't look like a regime that was teetering, that I saw on this funeral. It looked like nationalism is prevailing there in Iran right now, and leads me to wonder who is running the show, because the Ayatollah's son, the dead Ayatollah's son, who ostensibly is in control, has not been seen yet. Could be on Thursday that he is seen, when they finally lay the body to rest, but he still has not been seen. And so these attacks going on in the Gulf, do you think it could be, them striking? You have people in the Iranian government who are negotiating. At the same time, there are people in the Iranian government or regime, whatever you want to call it, who don't want to negotiate, who want revenge. And that was very obvious in all of these funeral ceremonies. So is there, I'll throw this out. I think they have their own internal fights going on about how to proceed. And that's why we're seeing these constant smaller attacks. Now it's been ramped up because of the attacks of a couple of days ago and this rather large strike back by the United States. But I mean, you think I'm on the right track here, guys, or am I off? I mean, I don't see everyone on the same page in Iran, and that could be partly what's contributing to this instability.
Ken, what's your take on this?
No, I think this is something that we don't have a really good handle on, other than to say that the IRGC leadership that's left over is now, more hardline than it was previously, as is the rest of those that are involved in governing the country.
That's
And
what I've read.
so we took
Actually,
out moderates.
yeah.
Yeah, we
That
took out moderates, but I think that the
uh,
IRGC is really driving the agenda for the main. With regard to the heir apparent and why we haven't seen him, I think that he is being kept safe and hidden. There's been reports, obviously, and we've talked about this, of his injuries that might be precluding him from going public. But I think really it's to protect him. And quite frankly, the Quds or the IRGC needs him, whether he has the big voice or not, to help provide legitimacy to their actions.
Yeah.
So you got that interesting dynamic there. So, but Mike, I think that the IRGC is carrying the big hammer.
So let's go back to our initial question we had. Are we in the same sort of low intensity conflict? Is that's ramped up a little bit, or are we heading towards an all out war?
I think it's
well,
just going to simmer like the. Go ahead, Bobby. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's what Trump said today. This is just another skirmish, and that's after he said, the MOU, the ceasefire is over. Now he's saying he doesn't think this will go very long. So, yeah, who knows what he thinks? I mean, what I see is somebody who's determined to keep blowing stuff up as a way he sees to get people to the negotiating table. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, and Iran's got this resiliency, and it certainly has discovered, probably, pleasantly surprised about it, that they can continue to antagonize. And because of all these other cascading effects, um, there's big price for the U.S. to pay, and they think they can wait us out with this. So what I see as the way ahead, certainly for the next 10 days or so, is a back and forth. The skirmishes, and it could go on that way for a long time.
So my assessment would be, and I'm interested in all of your assessments then on the record here, but my assessment is that we're not going to return to March where we had hundreds of missiles flying back and forth and all sorts of infrastructure being attacked across the Gulf region. I agree with you, Ken. I mean, I think it's elevated right now, but I don't see it. Although you never know the law of unintended consequences, and if uh, the only wild card to me is there seems to be a real pressure uh, on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps to deliver on punishment to the United States. And if they decide, let's say, to go after an aircraft carrier like the Abraham Lincoln in the North Arabian Sea, and they hit it, then all bets are off. But that aside, if things as they are, I agree with you. I see the status quo just as elevated right now. What do you think, Bobby?
I agree. I agree. I think it's like I said. I think it's his belief system that the military can force people to get back to the bargaining table to make a deal, and that's his stick, and that's what he's going to use. And I say he, the president.
And Ken, we're
I
agreeing
think,
with you
yeah,
then.
I think the IRGC is extremely calculating and would understand there's a certain line that they just don't want to cross. I keep worrying about the specter of the use of a tactical nuke just in a demonstration. Dropping it in the middle of a desolate section of Iran just to show that, hey, it's here, and Iran looking at that and going, sure, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes,
And then what does that do to, quote unquote, the ultimate deterrent, right? Either excuse me, shit or get off the pot.
that's
And
it.
I
That's
don't think that
exactly
anybody in their right mind is going to even the president, would consider using a nuke against a population center.
right. Mind may be the key term there, buddy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Yeah.
But it bothers me.
Yeah. I mean, I have a question. Speaking of our big ships, our aircraft carriers and stuff, at the height of the war, were they making a run at those aircraft carriers? Or, I mean, they never went in to the Gulf and they stayed in the Arabian Sea, but did they ever did you ever see any kind of concerted attack or any reporting open source coming out about concerted efforts to try to take out one of our big ships?
Ye Yeah, Mike, through my network, certainly there were runs made at the destroyers, and, of course, those are gonna be, out as screen for the carrier, and I think that we've been keeping the carrier, you know, well out of range of these things, with the exception of maybe the ballistic missiles. So, uh I believe they've been loitering, boring holes well outside the straits in the lower part of the Gulf of Oman, North Arabian Sea.
Now, let me shift gears here for a second because and let's look at the public affairs piece of this, because there was a major change today in how Department of Defense, Department of War, as the Trump administration calls it, in their public affairs strategy. And that is that CNN has the first embedded reporter on an American aircraft carrier in the North Arabian Sea. Sorry, the name of the reporter escapes me. She's one of the anchors at CNN in the midday time. But she was reporting live from the deck of the Abraham Lincoln, which, by the way, has been out since November. I mean, these guys got to be getting a little antsy right now. They were in a port call somewhere, and she reported that they left the port call early to be prepared. But that's not the news in this. To me, the news in this is there's not a Fox News reporter out there or a Newsmax reporter out there. The first embedded reporter out there is on an aircraft carrier, is a CNN reporter. And what this is telling me is the military leadership, I think, has gotten through to the Secretary Hegseth that we're losing the public affairs piece back home. And we've known that for a long time because this is an incredibly unpopular war. So for them to take that kind of a move and put a CNN reporter on an aircraft carrier tells me that there is a concerted effort to try to regain the support of the American public by, as has been done in every war, having reporters out there embedded and telling the stories of our men and women in uniform who are the ones that pay the price for this. And really, they're changing tactics and going that way that has been used in past wars, to use the press to help drum up support for American military operations. Thoughts, anybody?
Well, for somebody who has, excuse me, chastised CNN over and over again as being the enemy of the public, to put them out there right off the bat, that says an awful lot. First off, everybody watches CNN overseas. They may not be able to see Fox. I don't know if they do or don't.
No, there is some Fox, yeah.
Yeah, they're certainly watching CNN. So there's that public affairs angle too. You can address the whole world through CNN. Well, you can also address the American public through that. And it's not Fox, so they don't get into the issue of they're just out there making a propaganda film. CNN has some legitimacy still. So I think you're on a right track with that. I think there's a serious decision that's been made here to try to do something to change the way we see this war.
Sure feels like it. Do you have any thoughts, Ken?
Yeah, sort of connected slightly, left or right of the question. By doing that or having, finally getting, some press presence out on the front line, I think they have Sec War's got a great opportunity here if they will put their heads together and really sort through what are the current Iranian centers of gravity, and then buttons that, if pushed, will do to them what they're doing to us right now. And what they're doing to us right now is as we've discussed, is they're putting the entire global economy on their heels, and they're burning up all our weapons and that sort of thing. So uh, I would like to see those kind of things discussed and then played out and then explained. Don't obviously talk about it before you do it, but have folks ready to start doing the reporting, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something to keep an eye on what happens. And for those of you who don't travel a lot overseas, the CNN international audience, which is an entirely separate satellite channel to CNN USA that you see here, totally separate. Sometimes there's crossover, but they have different people, different anchors, sometimes different reporters, but they tend to use the same reporters. Um, it is a powerful force if you want to send a message. Has been used by other Americans. I know because, you know, I was in the middle of that. I was a CNN correspondent, and I know how they want to use the media. Our thing was, we don't want to be used. We want to tell what's going on. But, as a journalist, there's an extreme amount of pressure, not so much in an unpopular war, but in a popular war to say, hey, hold back a second. Not everything's rosy here because everyone wants to see victory, and CNN is I think in the view of not just this administration, but in public affairs officers through time, uh, has been used uh, to to build support, to show uh, that it's not just hype videos that, frankly, is all we've seen for the past few months during this war, or hype videos of missiles striking targets in Iran. That's what's being, released. And we haven't seen much of the men and women who have their butts on the line out there. And I think this is a dramatic change that bears watching for whatever reason. If it's aimed at an international audience, and maybe it was aimed and timed to do this in the middle of the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, but whoever the audience is, whether it's US or a foreign audience they're trying to demonstrate something to, doesn't make any difference. The fact that it's been done is a major shift in public affairs strategy as I see it right now. So it bears
Right.
watching.
Yep.
Bobby, you were mentioning the global economic impact. What are you seeing is the impact right now on the price of crude, and any other economic impacts you're seeing that's gone on because of these elevated retaliatory strikes?
I can tell you, we all know what's happening where crude's concerned. Here's what it looked like at noon today. And this is the commodities market, and you can see what's happening now. At the end of the commodities market is a 24-hour market. They only stop for about an hour to do maintenance, and then they keep on trading. So these numbers move around a little, and they have changed a little bit. West Texas Intermediate still holding pretty steady around 74. Brent crude still holding pretty steady around 79, 78, 79, give or take a dime or two. Then you come down to the precious metals market, and it has tumbled dramatically today. Silver lost a lot of 5% of its value today, and gold also took a bit of a beating. Now, those are starting to come back up a little bit because, as I said, things change. So, it comes and it goes, but that's about where it is right now. But whenever crude starts taking a spike upward, we know what that does to prices at the pump. That's not going to go down, and they're not going to hold steady too long. I would expect by tomorrow we're going to see some higher prices at the pumps already, which is not what the American public want to see. There's also a really interesting thing here I found today that I think is important and we need to share. This, as soon as I push the right button here, hang on just a second, share this, please. There we go. This is a report, storage at Cushing, Oklahoma, of crude oil. It's down to below 20 million barrels. Now, that is about 25 to 26% of their total capacity. So, a fourth of the oil in storage at Cushing, and that's where the West Texas Intermediate crude price is set, that we always quote, is down to 25%, a fourth of what is available. That keeps going on. Well, we know what that's going to mean. We're running out of oil, period. The United States is running out of crude. Despite the fact that we're still pumping, I mean, we see pump jacks all over Oklahoma going all the time, and they're pumping away, but it's not there. It's getting used up. Now, that doesn't count imports that come in off the coast. That's dirty oil. West Texas is pretty clean stuff. And our refineries are meant to process the dirty oil, so to speak. But man, when Cushing gets down to a fourth of capacity, and that's below 20 million barrels. Do the math. How much should be there if they're full?
Do you
A
remember,
huge,
Bobby? I'm trying to think. There was I saw a percentage figure. I don't know if it was 20% or 15 or 10% that they can't go below, or it screws
yes,
up their entire systems there.
yes. They have to have it at a certain point, and they're almost there. They're below 20 million, and that's usually where it starts to happen. You have to have enough oil to be able to keep that pipeline moving, and they're running out. And that's Cushing, and that's very important because that's where everything is for the United States. That's where we get our gasoline from eventually, is the crude oil that's in Cushing that gets sent down to the refineries in Oklahoma and in Texas. And it's running out. So, I mean, that's a big deal. And then on top of that, the insurance world for the people who carry crude through the strait is just gone nuts. At the height of this, there was a 10% what they call hull value. What's in your hull, 10% of it belongs to the insurance company. And that was astronomical. Well, it's dropped all the way down to 5%, and then it dropped down to 2% as things seem to be getting a little better. Guess what? They're back up over 5%. So 5% of every tanker full of oil is going to go to the insurance company, not to the people who pump the oil and so forth and turn it into gasoline.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's
that's a
another
big deal.
there's
And
another piece to this too, and that goes well beyond the spot price of crude and the stockpiles. Um, you got the crude oil, you've got then refinery input costs, and then you get production of gasoline, diesel, jet fuel. And then that goes to trucking, aviation, and agricultural inputs, distribution costs, retail, et cetera, et cetera. And everything just keeps coming up. And the danger
everything.
here is a second inflationary impulse before the first war shock is fully dissipated.
And that's what the International Monetary Fund's been warning about. That first shock is not over with, and we may be getting another one, and that would have a major impact on the world's economy if that happens. So we'll see. There's lots more to come.
Wow. And I think one thing too, can you explain to me, Ken, it's or Bobby, either one of you, it's counterintuitive to me because, I've always seen in my lifetime if there's instability in the world, a conflict breaks out, gold and silver, precious metals prices go up. But in this case, they're going down. Why is that?
Well, during times of risk off conditions and geopolitical shock, investors need liquidity, and so they're selling the gold,
Yep, that's it.
and
That's
that drives it
exactly it.
down.
Drives it down.
Dollar strengthens sharply, yields rise, and interest rates go up, and leverage positions get unwound. So when stocks, bonds, and precious metals all experience selling pressure, they can indicate not merely a change in these economic expectations, but a scramble for liquidity, and repricing
Cash.
of inflation risk.
Yeah, cash. Dollar bills.
Cash, right?
Yeah.
Cash.
Well,
Yes.
who do you think are the big players scrambling for liquidity? Could it be the Gulf states, our allies, Saudi Arabia,
Oh, you see
UAE?
it. You see it in all the institutional investors invested in. I mean, if you just watch ETFs like SLV for silver and GLD for gold, I mean, that's what drives the prices down. I mean, you got You got a combination of retail investors right on up to, you know, the big boys.
Yeah, and on top of that, the bond market went up another 2 basis points today, which means the interest rate is now it's over 4.75%. So I mean, it's starting to push 5%. That's a big deal for the United States because that means we're paying more and more and more interest on our debt, which is fast approaching $40 trillion. That's a gigantic amount of money.
Well, in all of this bad news, there is something that I perceive as good news.
Let's hear it, brother.
Uh, well, I mean, I'm interested in your take on this, guys. You know, Ukraine, let's shifting gears here, but, you know, to these seeming connected wars. But Ukraine, looks like Trump is edging towards Zelensky in Ukraine. I mean, and I thought it was significant that, you know, he said that he's going to push for Ukraine to get the license to build their own Patriot anti-missile batteries. Um, and it it seems like a dramatic shift, and I don't know if it's because Trump is frustrated with Putin, or Ukraine is winning. You know, they basically cut off Crimea, and their focus is you know, starving Crimea of energy right now. It seems like. What's your take on that?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, as we're talking about Ukraine, so in Trump's shift here, um, Trump may have come to the conclusion, and this is funny, it's not funny, but it's ironic, that a negotiated settlement, between Zelensky and Putin requires Ukraine to possess enough firepower to keep making it painful for Russia. It's the same thing that China, Russia, North Korea looking at as they're providing assistance to Iran, in that with Iran possessing enough military leverage, they can keep making it painful for us. It's kind of funny.
Dual paying jobs here.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget, Putin and Trump spent 90 minutes on the telephone on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
250th celebration of our independence.
But,
he
if
spent
Trump,
90 minutes talking to that guy.
Yeah, if Trump can get this settled in Europe, that helps, quite a bit in terms of then reassessing resource allocations for what continues to go on in the Persian Gulf.
Okay.
What else are we missing? Anything else we should be discussing?
Well, the president lost 3 court cases today, so, he continues to lose in the courts. He lost with the E. Jean Carroll Award. He lost the lawsuit he filed against the Post. Washington Post was tossed out. And the third one was what was the third one? Now I'm forgetting it. But he lost 3 of them today. So there you go.
Well, I mean, that in the middle of a war, that's a lot of distraction going on.
Must be a lot of quarter pounder with cheese flying through the air and hitting the wall in the Oval Office.
The ketchup is dripping. Oh no.
Well, gentlemen, hey, so one thing we really haven't done before in this podcast is just, because a lot of this great information we're getting, and basically, what we're doing is riding on Ken Campbell's coattails here on Beastworks, because Ken and Bob's doing his own shoe leather investigative reporting, but Ken, you're writing every day, reports that mirror what the intelligence community would be putting out. And so can you describe that process and where people can where they might be able to see what you're doing and to get more information about what we're talking about.
Sure. And just a real quick backstory. I started to do my own research on the war and all of these issues because I was tired of listening to you know, news broadcasts and pundits and whatnot that were just sort of, they really weren't getting into the details and explaining well what was going on and why and where and this sort of thing. And that expanded into generating, reports that because of my background and experience in the intelligence community and certainly Navy special operations, I had a pretty good idea would be important for the American public to better understand. And so I started publishing reports that were in a situation report type format, kind of an intelligence community type, written format. And as I increased subscribership or desires by friends and colleagues and others to put them on a distro list, um, the folk the research and the efforts to keep informing expanded, and that has blown up into you know a great opportunity for Beastworks LLC to start providing information, not necessarily to supplant the news or the intelligence community, but to speak directly to the importance of these events and really in terms of how they're impacting, the kitchen table and why Americans should care.
And
Uh,
where can
and
people find these?
so right now I'm publishing on my LinkedIn profile. You can find it on Ken Campbell. I also have a Substack channel. You can find Ken Campbell on Substack, and then we're doing it through this podcast. And subscribership is it's slowly growing. Depending upon the report, I get a lot of great feedback from LinkedIn, but because I have a large network there, that's where I started. Not that that's these reports are really uh, appropriate for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is more of a professional collaboration platform, but hell, I have, you know, 10,000 followers or 10,000 connections. And so I'm getting the word out that way. But, I saw this as a responsibility, Mike, as something really important to do. There's no subscription fee for what gets published. It's out there and it's out there for people to read and share and use and to comment on.
Yeah, and I want to say that we're doing this not to make money. Like we want to build up our subscriber and get to a certain level. We're doing it because all three of us have spent our entire lives trying to get the truth out. And
Yes.
we've seen a lot. And that, that's why we're called Greybeards. I mean, frankly, we are three wise old men, sometimes three wise acres too. But we've seen a lot of history between all three of us here, and sometimes make history. But um, that's why we're doing this. Uh, we just want a better discussion, a better understanding that's not clouded by political axes to grind or anything else.
Or
That would be the
conspiracy
easy way,
theories.
or
Yeah.
conspiracy
We
theories or
don't
anything
we don't
else
have
like
time for
that.
that. Yes.
So anyway, hey guys, it's World Cup's, well, it's not over, but for us it is.
And for us it
So
is.
let's get back to this, and let's keep providing more information to the great American people and people all over the world who come from great countries and who want to know more. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be back. You'll be getting notifications when we'll be returning, but we'll be back on a consistent basis with more podcasts on the Greybeards podcast, episode 14 today. Thank you all very much, and go feed the dogs, Bobby. I hear them barking.
They're upset. They're hungry.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay,
All right, guys.
guys.
Thanks.
Hang in there just for a second.